Alrighty, so we're going to go for session 2 on CPP BDN 4011. And so this is a list of documents that you might need to collect for your building permit. So I'd like you guys to make a draft list of this for yourselves, and you're going to have to make this as a checklist for yourselves, okay? This is one of your checklists. So, a bit like planning application, we've got the application for permit to build, so that's the application form itself. We've just seen that you've got a blank copy of an application form on the OneDrive. Not really sure why it says building permit separately, because that's the building permit itself that will be issued by the certifier. Amendment letter might be something that you might have if there was a history on the building site, so you don't particularly need that. The section 40 for structural design, do we need that? Yes, we do. Who do we get that from? Structural engineer. So I will be making notes if I was you on who we get these forms from. Where do they come from? This needs to be a list that you write down and you make a checklist for yourselves. So what I will be putting on it so far is the application form for the permit to build and the section 40 for structural design. You probably want to add the section 40 for mechanical design and section 40 for hydraulics design, those of you who are going to be doing AT2 and 3, because you're going to need them later on your checklist. But for now, for a dwelling house, you really would only need the section 40 for structural design. Plumbing certification design only. Will we need that for a class 1 building? Dwelling house? Yes, we will. Who are we going to get it from? The plumber. Yeah. So the other ones we get from the structural engineer, the mechanical engineer, the hydraulic engineer. We're also going to need the actual building plans. So in other words, your set of working drawings. You can write working drawings instead of building plans if you want. Working drawings. The plumbing plans. So you can't get a plumbing certificate without the plumbing plans. And I would also add onto that list there your structural documentation, mechanical documentation, and hydraulic documentation. So you can't get a section 40 without having a drawing to go with it.
Hydraulic design comes from a plumber?
No, hydraulic design comes from a hydraulic engineer. The plumbing certification that it's down there after that is from a plumber. So remember we said earlier this morning that generally speaking with the dwelling house, with a class 1, we only have a plumber. We don't have a hydraulics engineer as part of that design team. The design team is a whole lot smaller with just a dwelling house, small building project like that. So we would engage a structural engineer, but we wouldn't engage a hydraulics or a mechanical engineer. We'd just get the plumber to give us a plumbing certification for design only and a set of plumbing plans. Remember I said he might even just hand draw them over the floor plan.
And building plans means construction drawings.
Building plans means your working drawings, yeah. Your construction issue, working drawings.
And NT5 and rescue services report comes from...
It's again, that would be more for a commercial building, but you can put it onto the checklist. It'll just be not applicable.
Yeah, because are we creating like a generic checklist?
A generic checklist, this is, on all the documents you need to apply for a building permit. But I want you to have a column in there saying who is the person that you need to contact to get these things off, because quite likely you're the person who's going to coordinate all this documentation. You need to know who it is you're contacting.
And who will give us the fire and rescue services report? Is it the NT fire and rescue?
Yeah, NT Fire and Rescue. Now, generally speaking, the certifier sends them a set of working drawings, and then they give the report back to the certifier. So you generally don't have to pick that up yourself, but you could definitely needs to be on the list.
What is fidelity on?
Oh, good question. I'm going to come back to all the insurances in a minute. Is this all right? There's a few more that need to go in there.
For the, I think development permit of variation, did you say that was for HE?
Development permit or variation? No, but development permit or variation we haven't spoken about at all. It's your planning development permit that you receive from planning. So the certifier needs to know that you've already got permission, planning permission, before you can apply for the building permit. Okay? That's what that one's all about. Yeah, we hadn't spoken about that one. We've kind of jumped around a little bit.
Alright, sorry, because I heard people mentioning the fire
Yeah,
thing, and I was
yeah.
like, oh, did we miss that?
No, we hadn't mentioned that one at all.
The application for permit to build is the certifier, isn't it?
Yeah, you're applying to the certifier. But you need to give the certifier all of this documentation.
Yes, the application for permit to build.
So the application form.
Okay.
So the building permit, the second one, I would leave off because that's the bit he's going to issue that, the building permit itself. So you don't give him the building permit. Amendment letter, I just would leave off too. It's quite rare that you would have an amendment letter, because that's if you're applying to amend a building permit.
So with this checklist,
Mhm.
are all these things an individual checklist, or are these within our checklist? The
They're
application
all-
for permit?
They're all with a checklist that has a tick box or something that like this that you can say, have I received that?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a checklist for you to know what a complete set of documents looks like when you're making the application.
Nice.
So let's write it up here. Let's see what everyone's got. That was just a starter point. Has everybody added their unit? Yeah. David, I think you were on my list this morning, David. I think you were one of only 3 people who was. No, you haven't added it. You need to add it. So David, yeah, and you've added it. Added, yeah. I must talk to Febin as well.
So do we add all the things, or just the ones that I had to tick?
No, not just the ones that have been ticked is because it's already been filled out for an actual project.
So we add all of them?
Yep, you're making your own list. So it's quite a lot more documents than we had when we made the documentation list for the planning permit. Can't you see that very well? Where'd my black one go? Black is starting to run out on me. Oh, my markers are running out. Sorry, I might have to swap back to green. My black is running out. You got a black one? Can I borrow it, please? Okay. Of course you got it in the car. Oh, maybe. So the other thing you might want to add to that list is your contract with your builder. You need to have a copy of that. With your working drawings, there's a document that often goes along with working drawings that we sometimes need to include because it might contain lots of information in there, and it's called a specification. Who's heard of a specification before? So how you would have dealt with specifications? Maybe? So a specification is a written document. It's like a Word, it doesn't have to be in Word, but you know what I mean, a Word document that describes lots of elements of the building. For instance, you might have in your specification all of the finishes of the building. So you might say that the external wall type number 1 is to be, and you might describe it as, you know, blockwork with a render finish, and all the different paints, even as far down as to say like what sealant you put on the wall, what undercoat you put on the wall, what's the paint finish. So it's much more than just the paint colour. It's the whole specification of how the building should be painted. So sometimes there's too much written information to put on the drawings, and so with the working drawings we might have plus the specification. I'm going to show you an example of one later on. But for the purposes of the list, we'll just add it on there for now. What about energy efficiency? What did we talk about this morning? What might you need for in terms of energy efficiency? Deemed to comply would be if you were going to do it yourself and assess it against the NCC. Energy assessor will give you your star rating, the certificate. So we'll just call it the energy assessment certificate. For a dwelling house, I don't really need that. The DP, the development permit, is just what we talked about in the last unit. It's the development permit you got when you applied for planning. So that needs to be included on there too. Development permit, yeah. So with a Section 40 design certificate, generally it comes as a A4 certificate clipped onto a set of structural drawings. The drawings themselves are also stamped by the structural engineer and signed by the structural engineer. Okay, so that whole set of structural documentation needs to go in with your working drawings, as does the plumbing certificate and the stamped plumbing drawings. Yes?
I remember I prepared manufacturer certificate for us, so let's not need this.
Good question. Very good, Sharon. You're a step ahead. So, glazing certificate. When a glazier comes to site and fits the glass, they also give you a glazing certificate. That glazing certificate is in the application for the occupancy permit. So we have a whole other set of documents that we need to collect during the construction phase of a project. Thank you so much. During the construction phase of a project that we have to give to the building certifier at the end of construction. So not at this stage at all, no. So what will happen at this stage is in terms of glazing is that we'll have a window and door schedule in the drawing set. And we'll be saying on that window and door schedule that it needs to comply with the NCC. There's a couple of notes we need to add to that. But then the builder will go off and organise a glazier to come and fit the windows when it's on site. And when the windows are fitted, the windows are what we call self-certifying. So in other words, the manufacturer and installer will give us a certificate to say that the windows were manufactured and installed in compliance with the NCC, and we'll use that certificate then towards the occupancy permit. But at this point in the process, we don't have that certificate yet, because we're still post-construction here. We're only applying for the building permit. But good question. Okay, so has everybody got a draft list made of their checklist? Yeah, pretty much. Happy? You will have to submit this checklist, so we might as well do it. Now, I want to talk about insurances that is required. So, in the Northern Territory, I just want to see if there's a web page that explains this even better than me. Yes, please. Yeah, add them onto the bottom of your list. Development permit. Yeah. I can go back to that screen in a minute if you want. Let's see if there's a better explanation. All right, so another page on the Northern Territory Government website tells you all about the Fidelity Fund certificate. So the Fidelity Fund certificate is an insurance cover, okay? It's for residential only. It does not extend to high-rise apartments, and it does not extend to commercial buildings. It's for single dwellings, and it was set up, like we spoke about earlier, to protect the consumer, to protect the people building the house from builders going bankrupt during the process, okay? And so every building, in order to have a building permit, you must be covered by the Fidelity Fund, and you must provide the Fidelity Fund certificate. So what is covered? The Fidelity Fund certificate covers owners against the following costs if their builder becomes bankrupt, dies, disappears, or has their registration cancelled by the Building Practitioners Board, okay? And it covers the costs associated with transitioning to a new builder to complete the work, costs of rectifying non-structural defects after the first year of completion, costs of rectifying structural defects for 6 years after completion. The Fidelity Fund certificate gives consumer protection rights to owners of new homes, including duplexes, units up to 3 stories in height, and renovations to existing extensions to buildings, and also Class 1 buildings. I don't know why that's not in here.
Is that set up with the government, or is it?
It is. It's set up through TIO, when TIO was more owned by the government, and it's set up very, very much for the purpose of the builder going bankrupt. What it doesn't cover just normal defects. Unless your builder goes bankrupt, dies, leaves the country, disappears, all those things, the Fidelity Fund will never come into action.
What happens if you're halfway through build?
Yeah.
Knock it out?
Then, okay, so when the builder takes over your site and goes on site, the builder takes out insurance to cover against that. That's a different insurance. This is an insurance, it's more of a government type insurance that it's a compulsory purchase of this insurance to cover your build. It costs that much. It's a couple of hundred per build, you know, in the grand scheme of things on the cost of a house. It's not very much money, but it does cover you for this eventuality if the builder just disappears leaves your house half built. Because you must remember, if a builder disappears or something horrible, catastrophe happens during the build, where is all the documentation, you know? Where's all the inspection reports? Where does everything go? Maybe they disappear with the builder. And you as a consumer, what are you left with? you know, huge headaches and huge costs to get another. No other builders really ever want to come on site halfway through a build. No certifier wants to take over the certification of a building that's been began by a different certifier. You really need the continuity there, and that's why if you're ever doing a building project, try not to leave that documentation for years in between, like you were asking me earlier, what happens to something that's, documents are years old, because nobody else wants to take them on, nobody else wants the responsibility. So this is what Fidelity Fund Insurance. So please add Fidelity Fund Insurance to your list.
It takes a while for it to actually come through, doesn't it? Like, by the time you go like the Fidelity Fund. So I had a client that exactly had it. They were less than halfway through their build and their builder went bankrupt.
Oh, that happened.
This was only maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And it took over 6 months to get the insurance.
Yeah, it's not a quick.
They had to live with her mother because it didn't cover where do they live in the meantime.
No, it's not going to cover any of that.
Anything. So they lost a lot of money still.
Yeah.
With that. I mean, obviously it saved them.
Yes.
But it took 6 months and they were left without a home for 6 months.
Yeah.
And yeah, the headache of trying to get someone to take over and finish it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a horrible thing to happen, and I really hope that it never happens to you guys in the middle of a project, that your builder, something catastrophic happens with the builder, because there's nothing worse than losing that continuity of working with the same people and just following the process and following the paperwork trail all the way through is difficult enough without a huge disruption like that happening. It's massive. Yeah.
When you were trying to build, had to be delayed because they could only do a certain amount of credits at a time.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a big.
Well, that's more to do with the contractor's capability of having. So the contractor has to have enough money in the bank account to be able to cover all the building work he's taking on at any one time.
I remember they had big issues because they recently changed the name of the company.
Right. Yeah.
And they previously they could have up to 20+ houses, but because the business name changed, they limited them to 10, and they were like, nothing's changed, just the name.
Yeah.
Still wouldn't let them.
Yeah.
And I was so upset they ended up changing it back, and all these headaches, and I'm like, whoa, and I'm like, good thing I don't have to worry.
Lots of things happen on the insurance side, on the contractor side with contracts and things like that. We try not to get too wrapped up in that, but you know, it does happen, and it's more of a project management type of area, but rather than a draft person. But sometimes you are the person in the office responsible for gathering all these documents and sending them off to the building certifier. So that's why we need to cover this on this course in terms of drafting. So with insurance, then the builder also has to have another insurance policy that's called the Builder's Indemnity Insurance. Certificate of currency, and this is the builder's own insurance. How much is the builder insured for? Okay, so if he's building 20 houses at any one time, 20 by 300,000, he needs to be insured for that amount of money, and he needs to provide a certificate of currency from his insurance company to say that he's covered for that much to go wrong. Because if the cyclone comes through and knocks down all 20 houses, he needs to have insurance to cover all of them. You don't want to be the 19th person on the list who's not covered, So, sorry?
Does the design team get a copy of that?
Yeah, you can ask the builder for a copy of that, or ask your client to get it from the builder, because you're going to need it for the building permit application. So sometimes with dwelling houses, depends on the scenario. If you go to a builder and you say to the builder, go out to North Crest. I think I sent you all an invitation to go on one of these Saturdays when all the open houses, right? Every one of those builders out there will say to you, yeah, I can build you any of these houses. And you say, oh, do I need to go and get employ someone to do my drawings for me? No, you don't. Do you need to engage a building certifier? No, you don't. Do you need to engage anyone of these design teams? No, you don't, because who's looking after all that for you? The builder is, okay? The builder is working with a building certifier who he's engaged to do all the certification process, and he's going to do it for you. So a lot of people can build a house and not actually be aware of any of this, However, if you are a draft person or you're a building designer and you've got a client who comes to you for a design, and then you're going to go to a builder for the building part of it, which is actually what would have been the traditional method of people designing a house. You design it and then you build it. But builders have sort of taken over the design area and all the documentation part of it as well. But you get a lot less choice in the design of your house if you do it that way, because builders generally, you're building off their plans, okay, with their certifier, with their whole design team. So you don't get a whole lot of input. If you really want maximum input, you go to a designer yourself and you work with that designer to get the design you want. You document it, you gather up all this, these documents, and you give that to the certifier and you engage the certifier privately. I would advise any of you, if you're building a house yourself, to engage your certifier through the client, not through the builder. Again, like I told you earlier this morning, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest if the builder engages the certifier, because the certifier is supposed to be working in the consumer's best interest, not the builder's best interest. Do you understand that? And so the builder is paying him and he's signing off on the builder's work. So personally, if I was ever building a house, I would be engaging my own certifier to work on my behalf and to keep an eye on what the builder is doing for me, not the other way around. But builders have it all tied up at the moment.
So going back to the owner-builder situation, then they're technically the project manager, aren't they? So they would be...
Owner-builders doing everything themselves, yeah. But they would still need to engage a certifier. Yeah, yeah.
But like, so they can still get building design.
Yeah, you can get building design, you can be the owner-builder. Yeah. But
in that situation,
Yeah. There'll often be a scenario where if you're doing the design, that you're going to be, the client is not going to have a clue about any of this. Did you guys before you came here? And so they're not even going to know this list exists. They're going to think they're going to get a set of drawings and they're going to go to a builder and he's going to build it. That's what most people think. They don't know, they're unaware of all of this other certification that needs to go on in terms of complying with the NCC. So it does often fall to the draft person. So you'll be working often, if you're working in an office, there will be other people, more experienced in the office, and they'll be able to guide you through this process, and the certifier will certainly guide you through this process. The certifier will often send you a list of documents that he needs you to provide. The thing I need you to do is be educated enough to know that list already, to recognize it, and I've already got most of that documentation in order before, because if you send the application form and the set of working drawings and you don't send anything else, he's going to come back to you with a list, and it's going to take you time to put that list together. Whereas if you were already well aware of all the things you needed to provide him, you could have been working through all that while you're doing the drawings, and then everything's in one package, ready to go to the certifier. Certifier will love you for it. Yes, so that's the Fidelity Fund insurance, and then the second insurance is the builder's indemnity insurance, not to be confused with the Fidelity Fund. So the Fidelity Fund protects the consumer. Let me just write it up here. So that's one, and then I'm going to come over here. Get the words right. So the builder's indemnity insurance is not something that you're ever going to pay for. The builder absolutely has to do this himself, and it covers the builder against act of God type weather events during the construction. So builder's indemnity insurance. Right down here. And this is called So is everybody familiar with a certificate of currency? A certificate of a currency, if you've got insurance for any reason, you can call your insurance, say, can I have a certificate of currency? And basically it's just an A4 sheet of paper that will tell you the date you took out the insurance, how much you're insured for, and the date it will expire. And you can give that certificate of currency to anyone who wishes to have it. So if you've got professional indemnity insurance, it's a bit like the builder's indemnity insurance. It covers against you being sued by someone if you design their house terribly badly. Shouldn't even talk about this, but if you design their house terribly badly and it's the designer's fault, you can take out your own professional indemnity insurance, and often you'll be asked for your certificate of currency before you carry out work. So you should be asking the builder for a copy of that. So there's the list of type of work, Fidelity Fund certificate needed. Yes, you need it for a house, for duplex and townhouses, conversions, prefabricated house. No, you don't. And this is how that certifier got in trouble, because she put through the application as a prefabricated house when in fact it was just a standard house, so that the builder did not have to provide the Fidelity Fund insurance. It was a bit naughty. She got suspended for 2 years for doing that. Yeah. Yes, I know. The whole thing. Yeah. It's like more like a demountable or transportable, just being brought to a site. So you still have to have a building permit for the slab and all the footings in that scenario, but you don't for the actual prefabricated house. Yeah. They're getting really common. Oh, that's a really good question. And actually, it was the subject or topic of discussion on the Building Advisory Committee after this happened, because they wanted to make a definition of how much is actually what quantifies a prefabricated home. At the moment, it's the entire building being brought on. Because we could say, the roof trusses are prefabricated on nearly every house that we build. They're brought to site, but they're saying that's if the whole building, floor, walls, roof, is prefabricated altogether, and it's been brought in one transportation to the site at the moment. But that could change, as it is under discussion. Oh, fantastic. Do you watch Grand Designs? Don't you see the kid houses on Grand Designs? They're amazing. Yeah.
My best friend and her husband are builders. Her sister and husband still went with the stick home because even with matrix from him, it would still be cheaper. It was a bigger house. It was a beautiful house, obviously not to the extent that my friend's husband would build, but
Yeah.
for the money they had and the size they wanted.
Yep. So there's all different levels of prefabricated homes. You can literally get, one lift off a truck, there's your home. But you can get the whole kits, where you've designed the house. You can design the house in any shape, form you want, and it's all built in the factory and then transported in various panels and compartments to the site. And the extent of that is right up to, we build the house and then we just put a prefabricated truss roof on it. That's prefabricated as well. It's truss roof made in the factory. So where does the line get drawn there? So we'll look for more definitions for that in the future, but for the now we can take it that it's the whole house being lifted off the side of a truck.
Everything's structural prefabricated then.
Yeah. And then you dress the building on site.
Yeah.
Yep. But you can get prefabricated panels. I was looking at Grand Designs at the weekend, and there was a guy in England who had built the steel frame on site, and then the rest of the house went up in 3 days. And this was huge house. It was 2 stories, and literally in between each of the steel frame panels, and mostly squares and rectangles that he had left in between the framework, he literally had the panels come in. They were just craned on. They were finished externally and internally, including plumbing and electrics in the panel. And when he put the floor panels in, they had carpet on them. They literally were finished. That's the extent of the prefabrication there. So the prefabrication can work. That was like the structure was built on site, but then all the finishes were prefabricated. So it can happen in all forms and shapes. Prefabrication can. So, okay, and then the builder's indemnity insurance. Okay, I think that's pretty much our list for what we actually need for the building permit. So in that list, what are your main concerns going to be as a draftsperson? The bulk of your workload is going to be the working drawings.
And
Yeah.
development permit.
And the development permit, because you as as the designer will have hopefully already at this point applied for the DP. Often I've had cases where I've been applying for the building permit and the development permit hasn't come through yet. And we're waiting on the development permit. We're just waiting on that one last piece of paper to get the building permit signed off. That can often happen. So one of those things we might have to wait on. Okay. So that's our list. That list may extend and probably will extend more as we get towards assessment task 2, as I said, with the hydraulics and the mechanical engineers things. So you can add them to the list now for those of you who will be going on to do those, which I think is almost everyone. Okay, so the next list I want to look at is what is a working drawing? When we say it's lovely and neat on this checklist here, it's one component, compliant working drawings. Don't let that fool you. Compliant working drawings means a whole lot of work and a whole lot of drafting, and it's the main component of this list that we'll be looking at. So in the portal, I gave you... Oh, I have so many things open now, I don't know where I'm going. A working drawing checklist. So can you open that document? It's called Working Drawings Checklist. And there's also a compliance checklist. So these are the other two checklists that we're going to have a look at as well. So let's look at the working drawing checklist. At the moment, I have filled it out quite extensively, and we're going to look at each different part of it. But you can add to this. As you see, I've given it to you in a Word document. Oh, I hate this online Word. Let me... So what do you need to do? Oh, that's the compliance checklist. So let's think about a set of working drawings. On our site plan, what should we see? And we kind of know most of this already at this stage, okay? So a lot of this information will already be on your drawings from your planning application drawings. Do you guys want the lights on down at the back there? Or you're happy enough the way you are? It just seems really dark. I think the clouds have come over again. I'm like, it looks really dark back there. So on a site plan, what do we need? We obviously want the site boundary, the bearings, distances, all around the site boundary, which most of you will already have on your drawing. So the tick boxes are, is it applicable to this set of drawings, and is it done? Okay? There's a difference between being applicable and being actually on the drawing. We only tick the done part of the checklist when we've got it drawn on our drawings. Okay? That's the idea of this checklist. While you're drafting, you're using your checklist and you're ticking it off as you do it. If you don't use your checklist on a working drawing, you're probably going to forget things and you know, have to come back again. So this is a really good, fairly extensive checklist to ensure that you've got the elements on there. We also want the proposed building footprint. We want to see external walls and double lines. What do I mean by that? I want to see the outside face of the external wall and the inside face of the external wall, okay? And in between those double lines, I'd like to see some hatching indicating what the wall is made of. Okay? So carports, verandas, it's a single slab line that we should be seeing in plan. Yeah, everybody knows that? We just want to see the outline of the slab itself. The roof over, we want in a dashed line. Driveways, crossovers and car parks need to be indicated, again just using single lines to indicate the extent of those vehicle type where we have maybe concrete or bitumen or something like that to indicate driveways and all the rest of it. Swimming pool, if applicable. We want to see sheds and other existing structures, and setback dimensions. These setback dimensions are kind of different from your planning setback dimensions. I don't want to see planning setback dimensions on my working drawings. They're now irrelevant. I've got a development permit that says I've met all of that. I've got that one certificate, the development permit. I don't need to show them anymore on my drawings. What do I need setback dimensions for in working drawings? Well, I just want to know how far the building is from the boundary, okay? So a dimension line from the building to the boundary. I want to have a set out point for the builder, okay? So remember we looked at our set out points when we were doing site surveying, so maybe actually in that line, if you could put setback and also / set out dimensions for the building. Also with the NCC, do you remember a clause in the NCC that talks about fire separation? If your building is starting to be close to the boundary, you definitely want to be dimensioning how far the building is off the boundary so that the certifier can see how far your building is away and knows then that you are either compliant or non-compliant with that part of the NCC. So these are not planning set out back dimensions, they're set out and set back dimensions for NCC regulation. Landscaping, we want to see proposed trees, plants, shrubs. We want to see fencing, existing plants, trees, shrubs. We certainly want to note the council verge on our drawings. Where is that? And any retaining walls. So this is really just what we want to see on that site plan. Okay. Sometimes, as for planning, we might have a separate landscaping plan, and that's absolutely fine. If you want to show the softer landscaping in a separate plan, and we call it the landscape plan as part of your working drawing set. But you either show it just on your normal site plan or on a landscaping site plan. Site physical features. On a working set of drawings, we want to see the contours, if you have them. We want to see, if applicable, the septic tank and percolation locations for sewage, rural sites especially, bore locations for water, easements, any other properties, walls, any other physical features that the site may have. Services, we want to know the water meter location, power meter location, NBN box location, fire hydrant, any street lighting, site entry points for storm water. Okay, usually you're going to have a site visit to be able to determine where they are on your proposed site. Neighbouring structures, we want to see the outline of other properties and use, if applicable. This is really only appropriate, I suppose, if your neighbouring buildings are right on the boundary or they have some sort of significance when we go through the clauses, okay? Drawing protocols, a locality plan is usually quite good because then the certifier, when he goes to do his inspections, can actually find the site. So we usually have that on a cover sheet. Street names, lot numbers, the area of the site, and your north point, of course. Drawing labels, scale, proposed, existing. So, you know, at the bottom of your drawing, a site plan, you're going to say site plan. Line underneath, what scale your site plan is at. So a title on that drawing. Okay? And then your general notes and your dimensions. And that's just for the site plan. Okay, so quite a level of detail, would you think? You've already been doing it. It's about refining it now for working drawings. Okay? And I think with working drawings, you need a lot of dimensioning because the builder needs to be able to build that. So for instance, when you're doing your driveway and your crossovers and things like that, it's good to put some dimensions on there for the builder. Okay, we should never, we actually usually put notes on drawings to say that the builder shall not scale from this drawing. So he's not allowed to put a ruler on it and just scale off the dimensions. He's going to try and build from the dimensions that you've given him. So give him the dimensions that he needs to do that. So start thinking like a builder, okay? What will I need to see on the drawing? So the floor plan. Proposed building line work. So what do I mean by proposed building line work? What lines do I have on the drawing and what do they represent? So you obviously want to show the floor plan layout. Your external walls are going to be double lines with hatch. Sorry, on the site plan, They didn't necessarily have to be with hatch, but on the floor plan they certainly do for a working drawing. So for planning, we probably would have got away with drawing 2 lines for your external wall and just with a solid hatch, for instance, in between. So you end up with just a big thick black line showing the external walls. You will not get away with that for working drawings, nor should you. What we want to see is a hatch pattern that represents what the wall is made of on a floor plan, okay? Because that's obviously to the reader indicating what the construction is. I should be able to look at a floor plan and tell if it's, you know, timber frame, if it's steel frame, or if it's blockwork, just from looking at the plan, without any notes or anything, just looking at the hatch patterns. So what hatch patterns do we have at 1:100 for floor plan? For a blockwork house that we're doing. What should it look like? (45° blockwork, okay? So when I say hatch pattern, that's what I mean. When we're doing working drawings, the hierarchy of the line work is going to get really critically important, okay? So it's very hard for me to draw this up here, but this line should be a nice thick black line, outside and inside, and then the hatch line is lighter. Well, yeah, you can just use a lighter pen weight. Now I did send you all some notes there recently on controlling your line weights in Revit. Do you all get them? Might not have sent that to you. So there is certainly, there's been a lot of talk in the industry, I suppose, that within Revit it's difficult to see the line weight hierarchy because Revit is kind of selecting the line weights for you. So I did send you all a note on how you can override that in Revit. Because really with working drawings we need to start seeing that line work and the line thicknesses coming out. So I've tried in this list to put a little bit of emphasis on how thick different walls should be. So obviously on plan we also see columns or posts, carports, verandas with your single slab line. Mowing strips, paths around the building. They also need to be dimensioned. No point drawing a path around the building if the builder doesn't know how wide the path needs to be. So we should be showing all the dimensions for that when we're dimensioning as well. Your internal walls, again, double lines with hatch. So if the internal wall is blockwork, we do the same hatch like this. If the internal wall is plasterboard, what should we do? Plasterboard, stud wall, internal wall. How should we draw it in plan?
Hello, just white?
Yeah, it's just white because it's got structure inside of it. So by right, it should be like that with the lines of plasterboard. And in reality, it's going to have studs like that. Okay, but we don't draw it like that at 1:100. We simply draw the inside and the outside line. This line thickness for a plasterboard wall should be lighter than this one for a blockwork wall on the outside. Okay, so again, when you're reading the drawing, the external walls, the blockwork, the heavier construction is looking heavier on the floor plan as you look at it. And the lighter, lightweight walls should be looking a bit lighter. Say that again, David. No, I don't.
Internal wall.
Yeah.
Blockwork wall.
Internal blockwork. Internal blockwork wall with plasterboard lining?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's different. Okay. So on plan at 1:100, then you can draw your blockwork wall and say that's your plasterboard line. That's how you would draw that actually. You draw the double lines. However, what I prefer to do in those scenarios, if I'm starting to get into fairly complex wall types, is that I will draw my, so this is just a 75mm stud. I might maybe use a different hatch pattern on that. Maybe I'll use something that's not looking so much like blockwork, but you can just use something like that. And then on the side of my drawing, I'm going to build a legend. Okay? On the legend, it's going to show that wall being 200mm blockwork, okay? If it's going to be 200mm blockwork with plasterboard, then I'm just going to draw the two outside lines and I'm going to give it a completely different hatch pattern. And then in my legend, I'm going to fully text and word exactly how that wall is built. In fact, over in my legend, I'd probably draw the wall exactly as it is with all the different lines and say. And also, when you're drawing a legend, it's very important that you write internal, external. So nobody builds it the wrong way around. Puts the plasterboard on the outside. Yeah.
They'll do like one type in the legend, one will type
Yeah.
and then they'll do a description of it, and then they'll just do a simple small tag on each wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And are they using any hatchet in the plans? No, no hatch at all.
They'll use
They'll use the blockwork hatch only.
called the metal frames, like
Yeah. 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 The heavier construction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're doing something.
Yes. Yeah.
And they'll do something similar if they're renovating, so amending an existing tenancy. But they'll do a demolition plan where existing walls are all black and they just have different thicknesses, and new walls are white, and then you label which walls what. And then you actually do sections describing the details for the walls. And
Yeah.
then the walls will be demolished or red.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. That's a perfect example of what you would do. So that's a really good point there that Andrea said. So existing walls are in the industry. I'm going to use my whole pen if I do this. So the existing walls are the ones where you'll just have all black. You understand what I mean? That's how we represent an existing wall as standard in the industry, okay? So please don't ever draw new walls with solid hatch, okay? Anyone who's been in the industry for a while will read that as an existing wall straight away, okay? Yeah. Yes. Absolutely, and we tend to do it, we use it sometimes when we're just doing planning drawings or concept drawings. We tend to hatch the whole wall because maybe at that point in time you don't know what the wall is going to be made of, and we can use it as just as a, a thick black line around it to represent where the wall is going to be. But when we get to working drawings, we only ever use a solid black hatch for the wall if it's an existing wall. Okay? So there's lots. There is our drafting standards that do show different hatch patterns for representing different things. But I believe that obviously in Revit we can tag the walls, which is really important to tag all your walls. We've got the T1, isn't it? Yeah. I think Revit just brings out T1, T2. So you tag your walls, and then you're going to put a wall schedule or a wall legend on your floor plan. We've never had that before for planning or concept. This is quite new. This is getting into the nitty-gritty detail. How is the builder going to build that wall? Okay. The roof over with dashed lines, window openings and door openings, very important, and they all need to be dimensioned, even the internal ones. So I think we talked a bit about dimension lines before Christmas with Vic, is that right? Dimension lines for working drawings. We talked about the 4 layers of working drawings dimensioning, did we? Who wants to tell me about it? I'm going to have to rub out a little bit of this, so. Yep. Hold on, I'm going to write them down as you say them. I'm wipe this off. I need more whiteboard. Well, my whiteboard's hidden behind the screen, which is really annoying.
Well, that should be a double-sided one.
Yeah, so I can just flip it around. That's what Nick told me, didn't he? I haven't heard of it, but it's a good invention. All right, dimensioning. Our 4 lines of dimensions on a working drawing. What do we need to show the builder? Line 1. Your overall. usually get, as we get closer to the building, we get more complex.
Like step, and then the third one would be
Yeah, so we usually do the steps of the building. Number 3 is going to be our room sizes. And number 4 is going to be our, well, for this one I'll call it our openings, because I could say our blockwork dimensions. Our openings. So openings, and also the piece of blockwork in between, to the next opening, to the next door, to the next period. So those are our 4 lines of dimensioning that I expect to see on your working drawing. We've only had 2 lines up to now for planning. We've just looked at the overall and the room sizes. But for working drawings, that needs to get a lot more detail. Basically, you're trying to give the builder every dimension he needs to build the house. Now, that's not always absolutely possible to do. Including in the dimensions, what I'd like to see, just a few more items under this. So always you want to provide the dimensions of pathways. Mowing strip. Width of those. And your crossovers. Well, that's on the site plan. I think I've already said that on the list. And your roof overhang. The roof overhang, I often like to do it, so say, for instance, this is my house, and then I've got my roof overhang like this. If I'm drawing a dimension here, that is my overall for the house, I'll add my roof overhang here. And if that's, say, 900, I'll just go OH. 900 OH, 900 overhang. Just on the end of my overall. It's a really easy place to put that dimension that everyone is knowing it. Because often, if we've got a 900 overhang, and often we have a 900 path around the building, I've literally reduced my path or increased my path to 950 so that it doesn't sit right on the line of my wall. Okay, and then somewhere where the path is, around the front door usually, if I'm doing a detail, I'll pull up the dimensions. You won't always get all the dimensions on the floor plan. It's virtually impossible. If we can't get all of the dimensions on a floor plan at 1:100, what would we do instead of working drawings? What's your options? Part plans, pull out the detail, blow it up to a bigger scale on another sheet. All of those things are, instead of working drawings, there's no set place to stop. If you can't get it on the floor plan at 1:100, instead of completely cluttering your drawing and nobody can read it anymore, we just move that to another sheet. We make another sheet, we pull it out. It's especially, for instance, if you do a disabled accessible bathroom. There are so many dimensions you have to add to a disabled accessible bathroom that you can't add them at 1:100. You're going to have to do a 1:20 floor plan of just the bathroom. So on the floor plan at 1:100, you would dimension the room size, the overall room size of the disabled accessible bathroom, but then at your 1:120 floor plan, you're going to do the dimension to every single fixture and fitting in that room to prove compliance with the NCC.
You also have to do little dashed lines on the dimension floor plan, like you know, the plan for the disabled bathroom in particular, to show the 900 clearance and all of that as well. So
Yes, some people do it like that.
if it's just like an overall and big one, then you have to do a part plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just take that element out of the overall floor plan and you blow it up to 1:120, and that's an extra sheet then that you're adding to your working drawing set. Okay? So you obviously need all your window openings, your door openings. So obviously window and door openings have heights. How are we going to show the heights? In what schedule?
Window and door.
the window and door schedule. Yes, you would often show your heights in the window and door schedule. So generally, window and door heights are going to be 2.1. If there are variations to that, I would certainly be highlighting that in my window and door schedule, in like making it quite obvious, because if you put a window in and you want that window, for instance, it's quite trendy now to have your kitchen window just sitting directly between the workbench and the overheads. I would be making sure that my builder was very, very obvious on my drawings what head height that window is in, because you'll go to site and it'll be put in at 2.1, just like all the other windows, and then suddenly there's going to be an issue. So, you know, anything that's different from the norm, you need to be highlighting that on your working drawings. So fixtures and fittings need to be shown on your floor plan in the bathroom areas. Again, for detailed areas like bathrooms, for tiling layouts and all of that, often we're going to just do a detail sheet. We'll take the floor plan of the bathroom and we'll work that up into 4 elevations of the bathroom itself on another sheet. So on the 1:100 floor plan, we're just showing the bathroom and where the fixtures and fittings are as standard. Kitchen layout should also be shown in your floor plan, your kitchen, your cabinets, your sink, your cooker, etc. Built-in wardrobes and cupboards should also be shown at 1:100 and called up on the drawing, you know. Abbreviation for cupboard on a drawing, what is it? CUP''B. Yeah, just for cupboard. Wardrobes, WD, just can stand for wardrobe. So you're going to be abbreviating all this text because you're going to be trying to get it in as small as you can. If you use abbreviations on your floor plan, what should you do? Legend for your abbreviations. Abbreviations are often standardized across the industry and people start to think that everybody knows what they are. They don't. So always, when you use abbreviations for your kitchen sink or your fixtures and fittings, your WC, provide a legend. So legends are really important on these working drawings, okay? You're also going to indicate any voids or service ducts in plan. Your floor finishes should also be on the drawings. Why are floor finishes so important? Why do we put them on the drawings? Why would floor finishes be so important that you'd have to note them on the drawing? Sorry? Yeah. They do, and they also often need to set down the slab. So right in the very first day when they're laying that slab, they may need to look at, especially for a wet area, they may need to create the folds in the floor for your floor waste. It's very important to show where your floor waste is on the drawings in your bathroom, because they need to know when they're casting that slab which way they're going to lay those folds. Sometimes, not so much in Darwin, I've seen it, but in other areas, if you've got like, you know, tiles meeting carpet, or you've got, you know, solid timber floors, they will work out all the different set downs in the slab so that all your floor finishes, even though they're different, will finish at the same level. So no little trip hazards in the house as you go from one covering to the other. So always, from an architectural perspective, always underneath the room title, put your floor finish, okay? And again, you can abbreviate your floor finishes, but there needs to be a legend for the abbreviations. Oh. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So with our new houses here, we tend to tile the whole thing, so it's not such a big issue. But yeah, it can be.
When you said underneath the room label,
The room name. Yeah.
And the finished floor level.
No, you put the finished the floor covering. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just usually in brackets, it might say just carpet, tiles, whatever, just underneath. Yeah. Yeah. At a working drawing level, if you're going to tile a floor, like just the bathrooms, we might indicate that with like an actual tile pattern on the floor. I think it really clogs up the drawing, so I'd rather you didn't do it and just put tiles in brackets. And if we're going to show the actual tile layout, we'll do it at 1:20 later on. We'll make the bathroom and we'll show all the elevations of the bathroom. We'll show exactly where the tiles are going to go, but not at 1:100. It clutters the drawing too much. Floor finishes, yeah. So north arrow, room area legend, your room names, and then the drawing protocol is always on a floor plan. We want the north point. You label your drawings. So the typical scale is 1:100. That must have come off the site plan because we'd never have a 1:500 floor plan. So it'll either be, sorry, just cross out that 1:500 or take it off yours. Your floor plan should always be at 1:100. 1:200 for working drawings for floor plans is too small. You can't get the information you need onto the drawing at 1:200. Even if you say to me, the drawing is too big to go on the sheet, well then we're going to split the plan in half. We're going to put it across 2 sheets. We're not going to reduce the scale just to fit it on the sheet because it causes us more problems. Guys, as draftspeople, try and always use the biggest scale you can because it's easier for you. If you're trying to work at 1:200 and you're trying to fit all these dimensions and text and everything in there, it's just, you're making life hard for yourself. It may seem like it's harder to split the plan in 2, but it's actually easier in the long run. Okay? And we think we'll come across that maybe when we get to 83. So dimensions, your overall, your room sizes and dimensions as we've written up there, you can write them all in on your checklist. I should take that out. Let me edit. So all 4 dimensions. Then on the floor plan, you're also going to need your elevation markers and you're going to need your section markers as well. Okay? Room area legends and room names. They seem to be repeated twice, are they? All right, elevations. So again, we want the building outline. So we want to see the walls, the roof in elevation. Your line work in elevation should always be light elevation lines. Elevations should always look a bit lighter than your floor plans. Your ground line in an elevation should be a really heavy dark line, okay? So on your windows, on your elevations, I don't want to just see 4 lines. We need to, when we draw windows and elevations, we're going to be seeing the frame of the window, okay? In fact, in most elevations, what you want to be seeing is the frame and the openability of the window. If it's a slider or if it's a louver, you want to be seeing that detail in your elevation on a working drawing. Doors, again, include your frames. On elevation, you'll also see any steps up to the front door, up from ground level, up to anything that's at finished floor level. You'll also might see a step up onto a veranda or ramps. You'll also see your services, your air conditioners, your solar panels, whirlybirds, other vents, and neighbouring buildings if they're applicable, especially if they're very dominant right next door. And the drawing protocols, you want to have your title, your elevation title scale. Of course, we name our elevations north, south, east, west, or variants thereof, northwest, southwest, that type of thing. You want to see the natural ground level, and then you want to see the finished floor level. So you know the way we've looked at the elevations before. I have so not enough room. So if this is our house in elevation, we want to be calling out here finished floor level. You might even bring another line out. I often do this one. I'll bring my dashed line across for where my windows are and my door. And I might say 2100 if this is 00, depending on what my figures are. You might also have a line here for the top of wall. And you might have a line for the eaves line there as well. But what you also want down here is your ground line in a really thick, heavy line. And then your house sits like that if you can see the side of the slab. You understand that? So your ground line and your finished floor line are not the same thing. Okay? So in elevation, whoops, there was something wrong there. In elevation, you're not actually seeing this line. What you will see is the front door coming down and perhaps the step of the front door, like so, and then you just bring your dashed line across. Yeah? Terrible drawing, but we'll have a look at it on some examples soon. But you want to bring those dashed lines across, you know, and then if you've got 2.1 written up for the top of your window, then it's very clear that those windows are at 2.1. Even in elevation, you've demonstrated that. In elevation, it's like as if you stood in front of the house and you took a photograph. That's what you should be seeing on your drawing. If you do stand in front of your house and take a photograph, do you see the earth underneath the ground? No. We see that in section, but we don't see it in elevation, okay? So making sure that we don't see any sort of hatching down here, that's a no-no. For elevation, we just see the ground line. And we write NGL, natural ground level. We'll see the ridge height and the roof pitch. We would write that on our elevation, and then we would have annotation of our finishes, of our materials, and our colours, if applicable. Okay? We're going to let the builders pick the colours, or are we going to pick them? All right, on our sections, we can have 2 sections. It's most sets of working drawings, I would say to you, for all houses, no matter how simple, have a minimum of 2 sections. You may even need more. But I would certainly have a transverse section and a longitudinal section. So with the line work, we're a bit past break time. Maybe we'll do sections just after. Take a break, give my voice a rest. 10 minutes, we'll come back to sections. I might guess. All right, guys, we'll get back to it. We're just looking at what we need in a typical section then. So these are just, realistically, these are where we have to make checklists for ourselves, and this is a checklist that I begun to make for working drawings. I'm not saying it's a complete list, but it's just reminding you of some of the features of what we need to see on the working drawings. So the important thing to note with a section is that it's going to cut through, okay? And so you're going to have the building outline, the walls, roofs and slabs in section line work is going to be heavy. So anything you cut through needs to be a very heavy line, okay? And it also needs to have show all the cavities within the structures. So like I said, if you're cutting through the wall and the wall is a stud wall, you need to be showing it as you cut through it, okay? And so hatch to represent the materials that you've cut through. Show items in elevation, lighter line work. If I take a section through this room and I take it this way and I'm looking that way, so remembering your section markers on your plan, the points are going to show the direction of the section. So if I was taking the section through this room that way, my arrows and section lines would be pointing towards that wall. So what will I see? I'll see cutting through that wall. I'll see cutting through this whole slab. I'll see cutting through that wall and the window and cutting through the ceiling. But in elevation, I will see that wall. Okay? So I'll see that window in elevation. I'll see the line where the wall changes direction there. I'll see that line in elevation. So it's important when you're using or cutting in elevation or cutting in section that you see the elevation behind. You'll have a heavy ground line, but you will see the earth sand fill below the slab. Okay? You can name these items. You can name the earth and the sand and the fill, but please also note to engineer's design, okay? Because the structural engineer will have, on his drawings, he'll have how much compactation he needs on the fill, what type of fill it needs to be, all of those things, okay? So it's quite happy for you to call it sand, call it fill, but don't put any depths of those things on your architectural drawing. That's up to the engineer. Very importantly, in your section, you're going to, on a working drawing, which we haven't seen at all before, we haven't seen the vapor barriers, the isolation or any membranes. So remembering on the slab, on ground, we need to see the vapor barrier underneath the slab on ground. In a thick dashed line, we show members. Anything that's like you know, a sheet, like a plastic damp-proof course, or your isolation at roof level. So when we draw isolation, like as in, show you the sample, what I mean. Do we have some just foil? So sometimes in the roof we use material like this underneath the roof sheeting, which is known as isolation. We looked at it earlier in the year. Sometimes it can be just like an aluminium foil membrane, and it doesn't have that little spongy bit in the middle, and sometimes it does. So when we show this in section, we lap it over each of the roof battens, and then let it sag in between the roof battens. That needs to be shown in section on your roof plan. We'll look at that in a bit more detail when we start drawing it up. Also, you will show any insulation locations within cavities. So sometimes you might have some stud work like this, where you'll have lining on either side, and the cavity in here will actually be filled with insulation. Insulation in hatch is this type of hatch with the crosses, represents rigid insulation like this. So this kind of insulation is drawn with the X's in the hatch, like I've drawn there. Hard, rigid insulation. Blanket insulation, like you would see in your roof, is drawn like this, as a hatch pattern. It's like, almost like eighths, not supposed to cross each other. Like this. I will show you an example of a roof section, and we'll have a look at the insulation on there. So we also want to indicate vertical voids, service ducts in our section. Drawing protocols. On a section, we want the room names. Putting room names on a section really helps the person reading the section to know where it's taken through and what they're looking at. Legend for hatch patterns, legend for your wall types. The drawing title scale. So sections can either be 1:50 or 1:100. I love drawing my sections at 1:50. I think you can put a lot of detail in them at that scale. It depends on the building and the sheet layout, of course. You want to draw your natural ground line. And then very important dimensions to have in a section are your floor-to-floor levels, and we do these with a dimension line, as opposed to the elevations, where we actually pull out the levels in a dashed line along the elevation. In a section, we generally show our levels using dimension lines within the section. So we would do floor-to-floor dimension or the floor-to-ceiling dimension. Any questions? A question? No? I thought you looked a bit like you were going to say something there. Yeah.
We have to draw all of this in a section. I mean, in the line of roof, if you cut it, all of them, or in detail. I mean,
So,
really, because I don't know. In detail, we draw all of them.
yeah,
So I don't know how we can do it.
in section. I'll show you an example of our AT3 in section now. Just let me get through to the end of this list, and I'll start showing you some examples. So we want to also show the heights of any columns, post heights, the ridge height, the roof pitch we'll show with a dimension line as well, slab thicknesses, our door and window heights with dimension lines, the annotation of your structural elements. So you want to talk about the slab, the walls, the roof. Again, if we were talking about the slab, we just want to say it's a concrete slab. In an architectural drawing, you might talk about the slab finish. For example, if it was going to be a polished concrete slab, and you talk about the finished floor level. but we don't talk about the reinforcing that goes in the slab. We don't talk about the slab thickness because that's up to the structural engineer to dictate that. And we do put those notes on the slab to say to engineers design. So the annotation of the external claddings. Again, this could be done on elevation or in section. And so you have metal cladding or CFC sheeting, etc. And when we talk about the annotation of that, we will be referring back to the deemed to comply manual that we referenced this morning, because we'll be saying that they're fixed in accordance with the deemed to comply and putting the deemed to comply number in. Indicate vertical voids, we've already said that. So that's the end of my list. I've just talked about the features that need to be on plan, section and elevation. As we go through the drawing sets then, the drawings are kind of going to dictate to us what other sheets we have, okay? And so when I go through the checklist for the BCA, we're going to see how much of the BCA we can satisfy or prove compliance with in this drawings, and then if there are other elements of compliance with the NCC that we can't indicate on these drawings, then we're going to have to bring our drawings up to lower scales to show that. Okay, I think when we go through the checklist for that tomorrow, we will see that a lot more. Okay, what other drawings might evolve. But for now, I suppose that's enough to think about in that working drawings. So I'm going to show you, do I have that set here? Let me get my USB. I just want to get that set of drawings that we have for AT3. All right, so this is a set of working drawings. I think you already had to have a look at. These are for our AT3 project. For those of you who are part-time, David, you mightn't have seen this project before, but this is a set of working drawings. You can see it's got the approved stamp here. See who's actually stamped that. So that's the building permit stamp, and the certifier is Shane Cooper, and that's the stamp he gives this set of drawings when he actually issues the building permit. So as you can see, we've just got a locality plan, which is just an overhead view, clearly showing the neighbouring buildings, and then with a red outline showing the outline of the site, and then that black with the hatches just showing the proposed warehouse. We've got the drawing index on the cover sheet and just a project title. And of course all the other information there on the title block. That's just our site plan with the proposed building on there. So it's clearly saying new warehouse. Should say proposed warehouse, and then this is showing the existing warehouse. So clearly showing proposed and existing, showing the width of our roadways, existing car parking. We can see in the line work there that we have a heavy line and that concrete hatch pattern there indicating the concrete. This is the concrete tilt-up panel. We can see all the grid lines, which is actually more referenced in this building. We can see fixtures and fittings just at 1:100, no more than that. Actually, that's that dashed line that you're talking about, Andrea, for your turning circle. That's the disabled accessible bathroom as well. We're showing all the door swings, roller shutter door opening there. But this is the site plan, it's not the floor plan. We're showing the finished floor levels, indicating setback dimensions from the boundary. What else is on our site plan list? I can't see the list and this at the same time. So, easements, ramps, extent of ramps, lines of change in level of the concrete. We can see our I-beams, or our I-columns in plan. Say that again? Contours. We don't think we've got any contours on this one. I don't think there was ever a survey done for this site. There is a civil drawing that goes with this that deals with the levels.
Scale for this, I'm just curious.
The scale for that is 1:250, but that was at A1.
I've got mine at that.
So it'll be 1:500 at A3.
I would do it at A1.
You're doing it at A1, yeah. So 1:250. Yeah. So then with the floor plan was split into part plans at 1:100. 1:100 at A1. And then we get to show so I suppose the other thing that was not on my list was the tagging of your windows, the tagging of your roller shutter doors. Everywhere there's a column noting where it is. We're getting down to the detail of the actual doors and the columns in the wall. That's just showing, that wall is just showing two lines on the outside showing your stud wall, internal walls. Where we've got block work, we've got the block work hatch happening. We're showing our stairs. Stairs in general should be numbered, but I think there's a whole stair plan that comes with this set. So we've got the concrete floor finish, CT for ceramic tiles floor finish here. We've got a level, ground floor level. Door tags on numbering on the doors. We've got the ramps and their gradients, the 1:60. Wall types. Dimensioning, although on this one, because it's such a structural building, we've just dimensioned the grids for the structure, and then we've dimensioned just to the openings. So that's the roller shutter openings, about 4 meters. So we've got our overall and then the openings. We don't have any room sizes as such to dimension on this. And so then we've got quite a detailed legend, which is showing our walls, and they're talking about 100 millimeters precast wall panel, wall type 2, face, meaning bare-faced, 190 millimeter blockwork, that's the firewall. Third wall is wall type 3, 75 millimeter metal stud wall with plasterboard both sides, paint finish. Probably should have the thickness of the plasterboard there. I hope it's detailed somewhere else. And the precast on the custom orb wall cladding. And then you've got your ceilings, different ceiling types. Ceiling types can, on a commercial building, be shown in a reflected ceiling plan. It's also another type of plan that we can do that. So we're, looking down for our floor finishes, looking up for our ceiling finishes. On this one, we just put it all on the one floor plan. It's not too complicated, the building. Floor finishes then, looking at the legend for that. We've got a complex little numbering system going on here. So we just got the floor level, the unit number, and the room number. Reference for our, so refer to the door window schedule for the window and door details. Room schedule, then just naming the rooms. We didn't give the areas here, and then the firewall note there as well about what it needs to be rated as. So enough detail for the certifier to be able to look at that and see the compliance checks on that. Do you see this cloud? Does anyone know what the cloud is for? Revision cloud, yeah. So if after the building permit is issued, or usually we only use clouds during construction. So if something changes and you need to change the drawings during the construction phase, you might cloud that drawing to highlight at the end of construction what actually changed. So obviously there was that dimension on the column has actually changed where it is. Must have been something, maybe the structural engineer decided he needed the column location changed. So that's just a part floor plan. So then we have a part plan here, which is just looking in the vicinity of the disabled accessible bathroom and the stairs. Okay, so we can see that we're starting to show on the stairs, for instance, what is the dimension of the going. And in section somewhere we'll have the dimension of the risers. And we've got, so we're starting to have detail here at this scale. We're starting to see that not only do we have the blockwork wall here, but we have a line of perhaps plasterboard. Looks like it could be plasterboard with some sort of stud against the wall, because it's a bit thick to be just plasterboard. And we're going to be lining the inside of these concrete panels as well, to give a finished lining to the bathroom. Got just some overall dimensions. And then the 35 mil there for the batten and the plasterboard. It's probably 22 mil batten and 13 mil plasterboard. Got some section markers there, indicating that I can see a section through that area on sheet 14. So this is where cross-referencing and working drawing starts to become a lot more relevant. Got a more detailed look at the dimensions inside the WC upstairs. So it would have been difficult to do this at 1:100. Again, we've blown this up, just this part area of the floor plan, up to 1:50. Probably could have been 1:20. Roof plan. So we generally do include a roof plan in a set of working drawings because we want to see what's going on the roof. Maybe there's solar panels up there, maybe there's solar hot water, maybe there's whirlybirds, vents, all sorts of things can happen on the roof. We want to see what direction the roof sheeting is sloping towards. We want to start seeing some detail of where our downpipes are going to be and where our gutter is. You can see the downpipes there. Show where the OF is. Overflow usually is the OF. SE.
You have to add the roof plan?
Yes, you will be having a roof plan in all your working drawing sets. Yep. So downpipe, overflow, stop end, and then a specification for how wide the gutter is and what it is, and also. I think this is just a monopitch roof, it just all flows to one side. But generally speaking, with our roofs, they could flow in different directions. And we usually put the roof pitch on a roof plan and an arrow indicating the direction of flow. So it's just indicating a row of Ampelite roof sheeting, which is just that translucent roof sheeting that allows some natural light into the warehouses. So as you can see, there's a bit of detail to go on up on the roof plan. Elevations. So what have we got on the elevations? We've got our roller shutter door with wind lock as per DTC and the deemed to comply number. Okay, so that's proving your compliance with the deemed to comply manual for the roller shutter door. We've just got the levels on here. Don't have the dashed lines going across. We do have one dashed line there indicating the finished floor level, which I always put on the elevations in dash. What else do we have? Some notes there. Colorbond custom orb cladding to DCM number again. Yeah.
It's cut the ground.
Yeah, I know. That's really wrong.
Because it's a kind of section, but it's out of the building, it doesn't cut the building. I mean, the elevations are kind of section.
It's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to see that at all in elevation. What you should see is the line of the ground outside, immediately outside the building. So don't do that. It depends where it's cut though, I suppose. I think for this one it was probably done because we had to show all the different floor levels. See the way they're all different? And then the ground line was going to be actually just molded up to suit the disabled accessibility requirements because we had to deal with different slopes there. Just trying to see what other notes are relevant here. Nothing too much. Come on. Nothing. Won't do anything for me. All right, so sections. I think these are at 1:50. They look pretty detailed. 1:50 sections. If you've got room, definitely do your sections at 1:50. It gives you lots of room to put notes. So this is what I'm talking about in section here when I talk about the insulation. So this is our dashed line showing the sisolation looped over the roof purlins. This is the roof purlins here. And then this is showing insulation like a blanket insulation, which loops again over the purlins. It gets compressed at the purlin itself, but then loops in. So you can certainly show the extent of insulation. What happens then, the insulation has stopped here over the office area because this is a conditioned space, and in the warehouse we've just continued on the reflective foil sisolation. Okay, and then the sisolation also continues down the wall. Okay, and then we meet the concrete precast panel. But see the way this is really important in section here to show where the last girt is, where the last fixing point for the cladding is, how you're going to flash in around there into that. So that itself will be a detail later on, but we need to show it in section. So you've got your Aircel Instabrek 65, which is pretty much this material here that I just showed you. That's that material in the dashed line there. Continue down, external walls provide a 25 mm average air gap between the wall cladding and the membrane by the use of spacer biscuits. Spacer biscuits are just this like stick-on thing that you can get here that pushes it out from, if that's the wall, it kind of pushes it out like that. And you put the spacer biscuit in there. You don't need to draw the spacer biscuits, you can just write the note to say that. But it's that air gap that's giving you the insulation properties of the sisolation. We've got nominal heights here for the lowest point of the roof. We've got the roof overhang dimensioned. We've got the roof pitch dimensioned. Trim deck as per DTC. The colour surf mist on it. Again, notes about the insulation, and then providing R1.5 bulk insulation blanket with bonded foil face facing downwards into roof space over conditioned areas. So I'm going to give you a lot of the notes that you're going to have to put on the drawings, but I'm going to give them to you as JPEGs and you're going to be able to find the place in your working drawings to put the actual notes, okay? Because it is difficult to make up notes and get the wording right, so don't expect you to do all that. But as you can see, though, you do end up having to make up a lot of notes yourself. So proprietary window awning refer to structural drawings. So the structure for this awning is actually detailed in the structural drawings. We've got insulation coming in the wall here. So this dashed line is the reflective foil, and then the X's are indicating the bulk insulation in the wall there, meeting the floor. We've got provide 18mm structural plywood to manufacturer specifications, which is a ply floor going in there. Section through the stairs, showing risers, goings, nosing on the stairs, your line of nosing. It's showing me lots of dimensions for all of this. It doesn't actually show me a dimension to the balustrade, which it should. Floor coverings again, non-slip concrete finish to warehouse. So lots of details. Where we've got these big circles, then we've gone on further and we've developed up details of those areas at an even larger scale, so we can get even more detail in there. So we're going to continue down through the set. I'll show you some of them. Doesn't like changing on to the next page, does it? The longitudinal section, again with lots of notes. So see how much more notes we're starting to have to add to the drawings for working drawings to show your compliance. I'm just going to get out of these sections. So now we're onto our detail sheets, and these are at 1:20 details, and we're seeing again our Instabreak shown as a more solid line in detail. All our purlins are in there, our overhang for our sheeting, all of our overhangs for the roof itself, lots and lots of dimensions for the builder to have to use. So again, referring to structural drawings, see? Z purlin size refer to structural drawings. So I don't want to write a size of a purlin on my architectural drawings, because if I write the size of a purlin on there and the builder builds to the size that I've said, as opposed to the size the structural engineer has said on his drawings, then we're in some serious trouble. So I don't write member sizes on architectural drawings. I just simply say refer to the structural drawings. So reference to the Australian standard, provide safety mesh as per Australian standard number. We'll be looking at Australian standards tomorrow. So just lots and lots of details. One, we're looking at the concrete. Notice the hatching representing the different materials that you're actually cutting through. That's the actual portal frame. Precast concrete wall. Noting that water additive has to be added in there. Ramp gradients, anything that's architectural.
Are we going to have to produce exactly the same for our 83?
No. No, I'm not going to make you do this. This is the thing. It takes quite a long time to develop up a set of drawings like this. It really does, and you do have to do a lot of research. So what we're going to do is split it between this unit and the next unit as well. So the next unit is detailing. So we'll get you to do the details for a lot of these buildings in the next unit. For this unit, we certainly want to see the plan sections elevations up to working drawing standard, and also then where we have to look at certain areas in more detail. We'll be blowing them up to certain scales, so we'll look at certainly dimensioning up the disabled accessible bathroom and looking at elevations for that. For the house, I want you to do the bathroom as well, and we're going to look at a tile layout for the bathroom. So just picking out things that are very architectural and having a look at them and in more detail. And I'm just especially going to be concentrating on dimensioning, notes on drawings, just getting the quality of the drawings that you already have up to working drawings. Can I just say one thing that really bothers me about Revit is that when we print off a set of drawings in Revit, there are lines on those drawings often that nobody knows what the line represents. There should never, ever, ever be a line on a drawing that nobody knows what it is, what it's representing. And I think Revit has, because we're drawing 3D and we're kind of cutting through a model, as opposed to AutoCAD where we actually drew every single line and nobody ever drew a line for no particular reason. We tend to have these lines. So when you're giving me your working drawings, I don't want to see lines that you don't know what they are. Okay, if I say, what's that line representing? And you say, well, I don't know, Revit did it. Don't tell me Revit did it, okay? Either hide the line or find a way to hide in view. I don't want drawings that Revit did, I want drawings that you did. And you're fully in control of every line that goes on the page. Because the builder will ask you what the line represents. And he doesn't care if Revit did it or not. It's up to you to... Revit does it, I suppose, when you cut through something. And it's something that's there, so whether you want to see it or not. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's hiding in view. It's about hiding. What do we want to see? Understanding every line that Revit is cutting through and understanding whether it should be there or should be hidden in a particular view. Okay? I don't know what else is in this set. I think it's nearly all details. So as you can see, for a full set of working drawings, you do end up doing quite a lot of detailing. I think there are more. God, I wish this would work a bit quicker for me. Stairs details, so certainly for the apartment building we're going to be looking, we have already set up that sheet with all the stairs on it, but we will need to be looking at what information needs to be on that sheet so the certifier knows that that stairs complies with the NCC. And it, again, it looks at a lot of notes. So the NCC says a lot of these things in it, so the certifier certainly wants to know what the dimensions of the riser and the going are, and these are notes complying with the NCC. Nosing shall not project beyond the face of the riser. The riser may be vertical or displayed back 25 millimeters. The luminance strips that you need for commercial stairs, tactile ground surface indicators. So a lot of these notes we'll be using again when we come to it and looking at the stairs. Okay. I'm quite amazed that I've got a staircase with no numbers on the stairs. Please don't do that. I think you've already numbered them in Revit. That's it, is it? Okay, Vic is going to come and show us through a set of working drawings that he has for a dwelling house now, and looking at his standards. So I'll just go get him. And we'll have a look at his drawings, and then we'll leave it there for today. It's quite important to note that the specification is part of the working drawings. It's part of that set. So all of those things can work together. So working drawings, details, schedules, and this specification, which is just a Word document. So again, we usually just have some meanings of words, who are the people. Contracts and finance are often in there. Preliminaries, you know, what might be provided on the site. Provide temporary toilet accommodation. Connect to sewer main if required. Signs, provide signboard displaying the owner's name, the lot number, the builder's name, address and license on the site. This is for as the site is a site. Excavation, so talking about the survey marks. Just going through your specification. Do you want to take over here? I can't talk anymore. Let you run through it. So I'm just using your spec as a sample spec. So, yeah, just about survey marks, final cleaning, termite barriers, what they might be, materials. So specifications are quite generally or often are about materials. And, you know, obviously they've got some codes that they're going to use as a standard here. So where proprietary brands or materials or equipment have been specified, they shall be used in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations, okay? So that's a term we use quite a lot, that you want to fix your materials in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Although this morning we just talked about how in the Northern Territory we have the deemed to comply manual, so that often overrides the manufacturer's specifications for fixings here because of the cyclonic.
Those two little words can get you out of a lot of mess. Story later about something that occurred in one of my projects.
You did put that down?
Yes, I did. The builder substituted the project was a new ablution block, to a caravan park in Kalgoorlie, which was steel frame and all lined inside with billboard, fibre cement sheeting, because it was a building that was used 24/7. So, of course, in the speci, that manufacturer's recommendations on how to install, how to flush the joints, everything like that was and had to be, because of that location and the usage, to manufacturer's specification. Full stop. The builder substituted a different tape, different joining product, and within, I think, a couple of weeks, the owner showed me photos of the inside of this building with the actual tape just peeling off the wall, similar to wallpaper coming off a wall. It was just hanging there like a streamer. So, of course, the owner took the builder to court 3 months down the track. The builder actually tried to throw it back onto me, that my drawings and my specifications were not correct. And, of course, I thought, oh shit, here we go. So I went back through my specifications, through my drawings. All my drawings were noted to manufacturer's specifications, recommendations, blah, 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 and so was the speci. So when the owner came back to me and he said, no, your documentation is perfect. You're in the clear. So that cost the builder, I think, just to rectify that at that time was 30 grand. And I think he also was nearly struck off. So those two little words, or those few words there, critical when you're using a product that specifies that it should be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendation. So that, you know.
So he did it the same way manufacturers specified, just with different products.
He just substituted it was an inferior product. It didn't match and didn't go with the James Hardie billboard lining.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't made for that purpose.
It was just like different.
The product he used was a similar application sort of thing. It was similar, but it wasn't applicable for that application in a wet area that was constantly being used 24/7 with steam and all this sort of stuff. It's like putting sort of a wallpaper that you would put on your living room wall, putting that into a bathroom and having the shower running 24/7. What's going to happen to wallpaper in that area? It's just going to peel off the wall, which is exactly what happened to this product. So by that happening, the sheets were then, moisture was getting in behind the sheets, and he also didn't put, that's right, where the two sheets joined, he didn't put a stud behind it.
Oh.
He just flush jointed the sheets with no backing support and then covered it up. So I mean, those two, when that tape started peeling off, those sheets started to move a little bit, moisture got in behind it, and all sorts of things were created.
I feel like what goes through their heads to think that it's actually worth it in the long run.
Well,
Like, or do they just pay their workers to do it and then get lazy and not check the work has been done properly?
All of those things,
all of the
but
above.
generally it's because they've
All
got
of the
some
above.
material left over from the job before, and that did fine on that job, so let's just use that, because I don't want to go out and buy, you know, the proprietary item from the billboard that I really need. Sometimes it's the case that they just can't get that item that day, so they use a substitute item instead. So lots of reasons why that might happen.
Yes, there was lots. The builders, it's shocking to start with.
The problem is when that happens and you don't have a note on your drawing,
Yeah.
like Vic did for the manufacturer's specifications, if you don't have that, if there's just no information on the drawing of how that
You
should
leave
be
yourself
fixed,
wide open.
you're wide open to it being your fault. You didn't give the instruction to the builder. So that's why notations and references like that on the drawings are really important.
I mean, I get it if he perhaps hired contractors and they did the job wrong, even though it still falls on there. But that happened to my friend's husband. Tyler, and the Tyler wasn't in that day, so he sent someone else, and it wasn't done properly, so then he had to cut costs to fix it. Yeah, so.
But then, at the end of the day, it's the builder's responsibility because he's responsible for all those tradies that are
Yeah.
working for him.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
Oh, don't worry, like, it's known, you know, we looked this morning at the list of registered builders. Like, it's quite widely known in the industry that quite often the registered builder is never on site. He's
Yeah.
just hiring people to do the work for him and signing off on the work, but he still takes the responsibility for it. And at least go and check the workmanship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have had instances where the registered builder is a mate of a mate of a mate, and he's the one, but then that person is the one that has to sign the building approval receipt, and his details are on the building approval. So if anything happens, it's
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So again, you sort of think, well, hang on, just because he's a mate of a mate of a mate, would you put yourself through that? I wouldn't.
No.
You're risking your whole builder's ticket, everything,
Yeah.
putting it on the line if something does go wrong. Not me. Anyway, sorry.
Do you want to go through the rest?
Uh,
What else is in it? Do you have like a bit for materials in it?
I've
I was
touched
just
one of these
wondering.
things for
So it just talks about
10 years.
the site works, clearing the site,
Um,
site obstructions, what to do if you know, you got tree roots.
Yep.
The specifications can be quite detailed, but they're quite standard. So a company generally develops one specification and then uses it and develops it and edits it before it's released on the next job. So they're all job specific, but
Yeah.
they're quite often just one document that's
This
used
was,
again and again.
so I had a template in my practice that I developed probably over about 10 years. So every time a new project was done in the office, this was part of my job role, was to write speci. So it's not as if I wrote that from scratch. Template, and over the years, each project you get to sort of know, and you've got all these clauses sitting in each job specification. So if you've got a particular job that's similar to the one you're working on now that you did 3 months ago, you don't rewrite the bloody thing. Bring up that specification, grab the clause, copy and paste it. And you just change the wording to suit the current job. It's just far too complex to have to write everything from scratch every single time.
You've got a lot in here. You've got all your structural dimensions, everything in here.
Yeah.
So especially it's good for this thing, like all brickwork shall comply to the Australian standards, and you know, then if the Australian standards get updated, you just go in and update your specification, and you have it as your template. But what you have to be really careful of with specifications is that the specification never contradicts the drawings. All the information needs to be the same, because the builder is going to read both, and he's going to be conflicted if there is differences there.
I suppose in that, my thought process was a set of documents, a set of drawings, and a specification should never, ever be read separately. They complement each other. So the information that you show on a drawing is information that you can't put in a specification. And the information that goes in a speci is stuff you can't draw. You've got a word, you've got to spell it out in a specification. Things like, your balcony drains. Where are they? What are they? What sort of material? How is it installed? How do you show that on a drawing? That's just too hard. So that information goes in your spec. So your specification and your your drawings read together. They complement each other. So a note somewhere on your drawings, you can refer the person to the specification. as specified or something like that. When I first started my practice, I did a lot of work in WA, it was called Homes West, which was your state housing. And their specification for one project was about that thick. Now I had to, part of my my scope of works was doing all the selections of materials, the bricks, the colours, the roof material, all that sort of stuff. So that was an addenda to the actual specification. But the standard speci was about yay thick. Now those guys, when I read through, I didn't read through it, I skimmed through that document a few times, but they were telling the builder what size screw to use to screw a timber batten to a rafter. The actual gauge of the screw and all this sort of stuff, the length and everything. And I thought, you've got to be joking. But from a state government point of view, they were covering their asses in case something went wrong. So again, you've got to make a judgment on how much information, how far do you go in a specification. I always used to think, well, I don't really need to tell a builder how to suck eggs. That's his expertise, he's trained, he should know how to screw that batten to that rafter. So do I need to tell him that? No. It's on the documentation, it's on the drawings, it's on the details. So he should use his expertise that the client is paying for to understand that. So sometimes it's a case of, how much information do you put in the spec? How much do you leave out?
The good news is you don't have to write a spec for this unit. We just two working drawings and we put notes on it. We won't be writing a spec. But I did give you one of these, which is produced by the Northern Territory Government, and it's for any buildings that you're doing for the Territory Government will need to have this specification attached to it, but it's a really good base specification. Now, it's a 2011 version that we have here printed. I actually don't think it's been updated since then, so I think it is the most current one, but you just need to watch. Australian standard numbers may have changed in the meantime if you're ever using the information out of this, but it's a really good, just a sample of a specification that you can take with you, you know, and what a specification might look at, you know, especially to do with things like, as Vic said, things you can't put on the drawing, you know, like, you know, what's the mix of plaster you're going to use, you know, or how many coats of plaster, how do you do it? Do you put one coat on and then do a skim coat? You're not going to write that all on the drawings, but you can put a lot of that detailing work into the specification.
Yeah. Depending on the project, like, this one's a fairly complex project, but simple one-room additions that I used to do, I wouldn't write a speci in this format. It's too small. So, as a member of the Master Builders Association, the Housing Industry Association, I had access to the standard specification. You just go and buy one of those, charge the client for it, or 2 or 3 copies that you need to get your approval, fill out the front page with the client and job information, that goes in, there's my speci, done. Because of the nature of the project, you just don't need to go to this extent. Compared to a one-off project, yes you do, which was probably about 80% of my projects I did, so hence every one of those one-off jobs I had to do a specification. The speci, along with your specification, your working drawings, your consultant's drawings, sometimes a bill of quantities. There's your contract documents that go out to tender for the builder to quote on. The builder, to do his tender, needs the drawings, and he needs this document to tell him what product has the client selected. What do I price? How do I go about it? What item? So speci is really important. I think in the hierarchy, speci's up top, isn't it? Is it no? Oh, okay.
Never do that.
I always understood in the hierarchy of documents, your specification sits above your working drawings, above your consultant's drawings. So it is critical. It's a really important document.
Do you want to just have a quick flick through the drawings? I seem to be only able to open. Oh no, that's not it. Those are my drawings from earlier. No, that was the specification. I've got this one. Even if we just have a look around at your hatching and your what text you've got and all of that sort of thing, dimensioning. So that's what we've been looking at today. You know, how we do dimensionings on working drawings, how we do hatching, how we demonstrate different things on it. You can see your concrete hatch there.
Yeah, so guys, this
This is
the that's something. This is the concrete tilt panel house, the very last project I worked on. I worked on this set of documents, working drawings has all been done in Revit. My staff drafter actually did all these drawings. So your hatching pattern there, you can still see also with that, see how the line weights in a set of working drawings, anything that is obviously in plan view is cut. You need to up the line weight to give it a bit of depth, a bit of guts to it. Sorry? Raking up. The ceiling in the kitchen. This is the upper floor. So the kitchen has a rake ceiling. It's got this particular project's got skillion roofs on all different levels. So the kitchen has a rake ceiling on the underside of the steel roof structure. So it's a rake ceiling. It's not a flat ceiling. This particular, so that represents all of those walls are the concrete tilt panel walls. So the ground floor walls underneath these walls are all concrete tilt panel. These walls are brick, standard internal brick. So to differentiate the two types of materials, we chose different hatch patterns. So the builder knew exactly when he looked at that drawing, he knew which walls were which. Yeah. That's what the client asked for. Sorry? 2.
The big had rich clients.
I did this one, which unfortunately was my last client, and I thought, damn, I've just got to the right level and got the right client, and I've shut my practice. Sorry.
Yeah, some people can't use computers.
This particular one.
Look at all those dimensions.
Oops. That's the upper floor.
I don't think I can open the ground floor. The cover sheet and the top floor opened.
Yeah, that's okay. But on the ground floor, there's a garage in here because this particular house has the street frontage, but it has a laneway at the back. So the access to the property is from the back. So the garage was here, and the owner said, I'm not going to carry my shopping all the way through the house, up the stairs, back around through here to put into the kitchen. So can you put a lift in, please? And I said, yeah, no worries. That lift has, on the ground floor, the access doors to the lift are on this side. So she can come out of the garage, straight into the lift, come up the lift, and then when she gets up to the top, the door is on the opposite side. So it's a double entry lift. What I designed in that, also the actual car itself is glass. This wall here has 3 windows in it,
Oh, yeah.
so that as you're going up the lift, you can look out through the glass carriage, through the glass windows into this atrium. Because that atrium was their outdoor entertaining area. There was there was a timber deck with a barbecue area here. There was a jacuzzi set into it here. My interior design lady, we had hanging wall gardens on, I think, 3 walls. Because that was their outdoor entertaining area, the whole outdoor. There was no little bit of garden at the front. That's actually the front boundary of the site. So there's a little bit of garden here and a little bit of garden there. Drawing, that was the site. This wall was on the boundary. That wall is on the boundary.
Wow.
That is the back boundary. That is the front boundary. That's the site.
You do so much more with
Yes.
residential than you can commercial.
Well, this particular site had umpteen dozen zonings attached to it, which caused us, as a designer, a real headache to figure out what do I design. Technically, the building next door is a 2-storey mixed development, which is commercial on the ground floor and residential on the top floor. It's a 2-storey building, but they had a business on the ground floor and there was an apartment and a house on the top floor.
So that's the main street. It's not like something.
No, it's not a main. It's a next one back from the main street.
But it's in quite an urban area, obviously. It's mostly quite built up.
Semi, sort of in between the CBD and the residential sort of area.
Right.
But the building next door had the site is 22 metres long and it had a 7-metre high concrete tilt panel wall right along the whole. That was the side of the building. And of course, that's north. So passive solar design, courtyard should be on the north to pick up all the winter sun. When I stood on the side, I said, there's no frigging way I'm going to achieve that because there's a dirty, great big bloody concrete wall on the boundary. So that was my reasoning to do that.
It's a good concept, especially if you've got.
And on the top floor, that's glass, that's all glass. And on the ground floor, the entry is here. There's glass all through here and through here as well, which caused the headache when I did the energy efficiency.
Well, what is the
Failed.
What's the roof then?
Oh, I think you told them. Yeah, you said it was double glazed, you had to make it.
Double glazing shot the budget out of the water. So I found on the internet this retractable awning shade sail. That's what the assessor said. The only other option is, can we put some shading up there? I said, oh, no. But the problem was that this is north, so of course your summer sun, in summer, the sun is pelting through all that glass.
What did you do for drainage? So, because that obviously doesn't cover the whole part of the atrium, you would get water in there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well that also was the one I chose was a rain sensitive awning. So as soon as a bit of rain hits it, it automatically retracts.
Okay.
So if it did start to rain, that would wind back in.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So there's a big drainage system underground.
Have to pipe it under.
Yeah.
Pipe it under the house and that way. But all the storm water on that, because we've only got this little bit of garden, that little bit of garden. That's it. That's where all the storm water goes.
Yeah. Oh, I think I like that.
Sorry?
So you know that this won't work in Darwin, don't you?
Yeah.
You know why? Why?
Oh,
Why won't it?
This is Bunbury.
No, not because of the rain. How would you think you'd feel sitting outside in that atrium in Darwin?
Very hard.
Very hot. You've blocked all the breezes, and you've no overhead shade.
No
You don't
overhead
have to have
shade.
overhead shade. So we
Yeah.
try to have overhead shade.
Imagine
We
that.
try overhead shade and open all around. Whereas down south you can do closed all around with no overhead shade, so
Yeah,
we lose
quite
out
cool
on that
in,
concept a
quite
little
cool
bit.
in Bunbury.
But it is lovely. I can't seem to open it. I don't know why it won't open for me.
Ground floor? Top floor, site and ground floor.
It just doesn't seem to want to open.
Okay.
It's just a pity because everybody wants to see it. I actually tried to go the other way from.
Not with Adobe?
No, I tried that as well.
Okay.
This way.
You said the north boundary is 20 metres.
22. 22 metre long block.
No, it won't open for me.
This is not open, because
No. I don't know why that is.
it's just open with Adobe then.
It won't. Tried it every single way I can to do it.
Saved and that in Adobe, it should.
Hang on, no, that's my one.
That's that.
Because you said this came off that disc you had there, this old.
That was off my, my CD.
Season. Some of them might be corrupt. Isn't that weird? The way some would be and some wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I tried to open all of them.
Don't know if I've done that in there. Mine as well.
They should open
Yes.
two of them.
So dimensions.
Lots. Look at that. Overall.
So yeah, just having a quick look at that.
We better let this guy go anyway, but.
So remember when I said we talked about the hierarchy of the dimensions. When you start to looking at a project, your number of rows is going to depend on your project. Like, especially when you start getting into your rooms. I had that one student, I said that to one student that, okay, your first row is your openings, your second row is this, rooms, third row is this, fourth row is that, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's what she thought, one of those, one of those, one of those, and one of those. So of course, with a project like this, she only had one bit for the rooms. I said, where's the rest of them? She said, well, you only told me I only had one. I said, no, you've got to do as many as is necessary.
Yeah, I guess it's,
And if you start in the middle and you generally work your way out, and if you keep going until you've covered everything.
That's why it's important not to cram your drawings too tightly on your sheets either, so you leave room for dimensions. Andrea, in the morning.
That's what,
Everybody, we'll finish there for today, because I know you all look like you just, can drag through the NCC backwards.
Just use these or just for a.
Yeah, you can keep them. Yeah, you can keep them as a reference.
dimension diagonal. You just dimension it like two.
diagonally.
Yeah, like see that in near the atrium?
No, you actually don't dimension diagonally, you usually dimension
No.
off the side.
Yeah, usually it'll be a dimension, say, from there to there to there.
Yeah.
And the same from there to there to there. So you're sort of triangulating. Because I think if I'm the builder on site setting that out, how am I going to do it? Sometimes I'll give that dimension inside here, because you can put dimensions inside a drawing. They don't all have to go outside. Usually that would be that row of dimension, that row of dimension, part of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you all. Thank you, Vic. Having a look at that job with us.
No way.
They couldn't open all the drawings though.
Yeah.
You couldn't get the whole thing. Oh, look at that. know what that is? It's the name of the town I'm from in Ireland.
Really?
Yeah, I laughed when I came home. I went,
Wow.
what?
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
it's a
County
side address.
Wexford.
It's
Yeah.
a side address, Wexford Lane.
I never knew there was a Wexford Lane in Bunbury.
Mm.
There you go.
Bunbury.
Learn something new every day. Oh, we're all shattered after going through NCCs and things today.
I know, I used to say to students, if you suffer from insomnia,
Yeah, just read the NCC as you go to bed tonight and you'll be sleeping like.
you'll be like about 30 seconds.
Give you, 30 seconds of that. Struggling to keep everyone awake, I think. Listen to those.
Not surprised.
I'm just getting through it, and we're going to start drawing as soon as we can. Let's see what everybody wants to do.
Alright, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Yep. I gave you what? All one of the materials, yeah? Yeah. Yeah, you could use it for something like that, yeah? Yeah, using it internally. Yeah, just back in the kitchen, you can use it, yeah, you can put that. Yeah. Because you were doing, you're doing
I
in the
thought
first
your
year.
course is
Well, no, yes, tell me all the materials you have, because we can change it if you don't want to do it. Let me just shut everything down while you're doing that, because I've got to go pretty. What? You've done stainless steel?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's fine then. If you've done it, don't do another one.
Okay.
Don't worry too much about that. Be fine. Just do it as a material, the qualities of the material.
Because I have to mention that where it's.
Oh yeah, just that's on the stairs,
Oh.
or splashback, or whatever you want. Anywhere you might use stainless steel. What's that?